I'm Arunima from Knit-A-Knotter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Turquoise Fiesta Shawl. I've used uh, two skeins of yarn to make that shawl. One is Craft Smart Solid in color turquoise and one skein of the Craft Smart Ombre in color Fiesta. And you could make this with any combination of colors and with any yarn pretty much by with an appropriate hook. I used an 8mm hook with that yarn, but again, if you choose to use different yarn, you could use an appropriate hook for that yarn and the pattern would still remain the same. I think this will look great with any combination of colors. The possibilities are endless, and let's jump right in. For the purpose of this video, I am not using the same yarn as the one in the pattern, but it is similar weight yarn. I'm using a different size hook as well, but as I said, you could use any yarn with an appropriate size hook and the pattern will still remain the same. So let's start with row 1. Pick your color C1 and chain 2. So this is my color C1 and I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, and make the foundation row stitches. It says in the back loop in the pattern, it doesn't really matter for this pattern, but I generally like to make my foundation stitches in the back loop. I have a separate tutorial for how to make the foundation row and different options. You're welcome to check that out. But going back to the pattern, the first row has 2 chains, so there will be 2 loops on your hook after the end of the forward pass, and you have to stop here because the return pass is made with a different color. So the technique that's used in this pattern is with every row you will change color on the return pass. So I'll show you how to do that. Again, I have a separate tutorial for just that if you want to take a look. So I'm not going to go into the details of how to do it, but I'm going to show you how to make this shawl using that technique. So for the return pass, you join. So for the return pass, you join your color C2, and that's how you do it, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So you have to make sure that you do not pull this loop to a close, just leave it as it is, a little loose. You can see that this entire first row is made with the color C1. Now row 2. For row 2, you need to make the forward pass with the color C2. So this is my C2, and make a Tunisian full stitch in every space between the stitches of the previous row. So again, I have a separate tutorial to explain how to make Tunisian full stitches. I'll include a link in the description below for all the tutorials that are mentioned in this video. But so a full stitch is made between 2 stitches. So in this case, this is the first stitch, this is the second stitch, and this is the space between the 2 stitches. So that's where I'm going to make my full stitch, and there's just going to be 1 full stitch, and then I need to make the last stitch. So for the last stitch, we usually pick up the 2 vertical bars from the previous row last stitch, but in this case, because of this join, we don't have that. So I'm just going to pick up the one that we do have, yarn over, pull through. So you see that you will have 3 loops on the hook in this row. This is 1 more than what you had in the previous row, which was 2, and now we have 3. Now for the return pass, you join C1. So you just leave this in the back, bring your C1 forward, take it, chain 1 and yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. So this is how it's looking in the beginning. You won't really see much of a pattern just yet, but let's keep going and you will start to see the pattern build up. Now row 3 with C1, make a full stitch in every space between the stitches of the previous row except for the last one. So here we have 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. There is this one space and the second space here. So according to the instructions, you just make a full stitch in the first one and not in the last one. So I'm going to make a full stitch here, and then I'm going to make a last stitch. And now for the last stitch, I do have those 2 vertical bars, but they're just of 2 different colors. So I'm going to yarn over, pull through, and now the number of stitches in my forward loops on my hook at the end of the forward pass is 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. That is the same as the previous row. And I'm going to now leave that in the back, pick up my C2, and chain 1. Again, I'm going to pull this a little, pull my C1 a little, so this last stitch is not too loose, but I'm not going to close that stitch, so it's still going to be there. It's just I've tightened it to match the length of the other loops. And then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. The next row says row 4 to the one row before the last row. It says repeat rows 2 and 3. So now let's repeat row 2. Now with C2, make a Tunisian full stitch in every space. So this 1, 2, and then the last stitch by picking up these 2 loops here. So now we have 1 stitch more than the previous row. So we had 3 in the previous row, and now we have 4. To make the reverse pass, I'm going to pick up my C1, chain, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Now I have to repeat row 3, which is make a full stitch in every space between the stitches of the previous row except for the last one. So I now have 4 stitches here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to make a full stitch here, here. So that's 2 full stitches, and I'm going to skip the last one. So there will be 2 full stitches and the last stitch here. And the number of stitches are 4. This is the same as the number of stitches as the previous row. So to now make the return pass, I leave that yarn behind. I pick up C2, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. And I'm going to continue doing this. So I'm going to continue repeating rows 2 and 3 until I reach the desired length of my scarf, of my shawl. So I'll just make a few more rows for you to see. So this is again repeat row 2, where I make a full stitch in every space. So it's very easy to remember. You would always have a full stitch in every space with color C2, and with color C1 you would always skip the last that there would not be a full stitch in that last space there. So if you are in the middle of working on something or if you're watching TV while making this, you don't have to look at which row you're on. You can just look at the color that you're working with, and you can figure out whether you need to make a repeat of row 2 or a repeat of row 3. So now I'm with my color C1, so there is no full stitch in the last loop. So this is a repeat of row 3, and here. So you can start seeing a little bit of a pattern there. The purples are lining up on top of the purples, and the white is lining up on top of the white. This is white again, so this is my C2. I make a full stitch in all the stitches, last stitch, and pick up C1, yarn over, pull through 2, and then continue repeat of row 3. So you can see this pattern building up, and you can see that these last stitches over here, they line up with the color that was on that row. So the purple lines up with the purple, the white with the white. I'm going to make a few more rows here so you can see how it shows up, how it looks after a few rows. So here it is. This is how it looks, and I can keep going, and with every 2 rows you will add another stitch, and that will create this angle here, and that will make sure that you get a triangle shawl in the end. The beauty of this pattern is that you can keep going all the way until you want to. You can stop when you've achieved the desired size of your shawl, or you could stop when you run out of yarn. That's what I did. Once I ran out of one skein, that is when I ended my pattern, ended my shawl, and I just that was a good enough length for me. But I could have potentially added more yarn, or I could have switched colors. Like you could add a different color here. Instead of using purple, you could use a different color, or you could use a completely different combination of 2 colors here. I think you can do a bunch of stuff with this pattern. So if you look at the back, you see horizontal lines here, they're vertical lines. So this is a reversible pattern. You can wear it both ways. I think it'll look great both sides. And now, so I'm now going to assume that I have reached the end of my shawl, and this is how I This is how I want it. This is how long I want it. This is a miniature version, yes, but it will be very similar to this towards the end of your shawl. It just be a larger number of stitches, but they will look like this. So this is the last row. So I am going to make a full stitch in every stitch of every space in every space between stitches of the previous row, but I'll go on and bind off as I go. So I'm going to bind off using slip stitches. So I'm going to do full stitch and then slip, full stitch, slip, and keep going. Until you reach that last stitch. You make your last bind off stitch in that last stitch. And that's it. You cut your yarn. You cut your yarn and you will cut both of these, and you will at this point weave in ends, and that's it. So another really good thing about this shawl is that you will, if you end up using 2 skeins of yarn, you will only have 4 ends to weave in at the end, and that is one of my that is one of those things that I really don't like doing. So I love it when there are less yarn ends to weave in. So there'll just be 4 at the end of this shawl. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And at this point, you just have to block your shawl. With mine, I steam blocked it. This one is cotton yarn. It is holding up really well. I would have probably not blocked it or just done a water block. So depending on the yarn that you've used, you can go ahead and block your shawl. I highly recommend doing that. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my other tutorials. Bye bye.